Adreinne Rich was or still is, I'm sorry. Adreinne Rich is a very important poet, especially in the feminist canon. She's written many books of poetry. Her influence on female poets and poetry in general is really profound. We're going to look at two examples here. A very famous poem from her is On Jennifer's Tigers, and then we'll look at Diving into the Wreck. So On Jennifer's Tigers is written very simply. It is 4-line stanzas. So we have quatrains, and we have 3 of them. So we have a total of 12 lines. We have, you could see here, a rhyme pattern of A, A, B, B, A, A, B, B, where we have end rhymes, screen, green, tree, certainty. There's a slant rhyme. You have a perfect rhyme, screen and green. Let's read it together. She writes, On Jennifer's tigers prance across a screen, bright topaz denizens of a world of green. They do not fear the men beneath the tree. They pace in sleek, chivalric certainty. On Jennifer's finger, fluttering through her wool, find even the ivory needle hard to pull. The massive weight of Uncle's wedding band sits heavily upon Aunt Jennifer's hand. When Aunt is dead, her terrified hands will lie, still ringed with ordeals she was mastered by. The tigers in the panel that she made will go on prancing, proud and unafraid. So there's 2 subjects of this poem. The first subject is Aunt Jennifer, and the second subject is the art that she makes. And the screen that's being talked about here is, you can imagine, like a tapestry or like one of those folding screens that you would use to separate a room, like a room divider. So 2 things here. Aunt Jennifer herself, who creates these tigers. The tigers are topaz. The world that they live in is green, and they are being described as chivalric. So there's like this idea of a masculinity in these tigers. And then there's description of Aunt Jennifer actually creating this art, and that her hands are creating the art, but her hand, what you can see prominently, is her wedding band. So the idea of marriage, and the way that the speaker is talking about marriage, is this massive weight that sits heavily upon Aunt Jennifer. So this marriage is an institution of entrapment for Aunt Jennifer. And even when Aunt Jennifer is dead and she is laying down in her coffin with her hands across her chest, that wedding band is still going to be there. And this is this reference. She's still ringed with ordeals she was mastered by Uncle, the man who she's married. However, even after she's gone, that art that she created, the tigers in that panel, right? So first it's called a panel, then it's called a screen. The tigers that she created, they are going to go on prancing, and they are going to be proud and unafraid. So it's a very clear message here that, women are mastered by the idea of marriage. They're in these institutions. They have very little control over their lives outside of being kind of hitched to a male in their lives, whether it's a father or a husband. However, the art that women can create can be influencing and powerful and being pure and authentic in a way that sometimes women cannot be in their real lives. And so the title is not On Jennifer, but On Jennifer's Tigers, the creation that she makes. So very interesting and important piece of feminist poetry. Now here, when we look into Diving into the Wreck, this is a really great example of an extended metaphor where the poem is an entire metaphor, the entire length of the poem. And the metaphor here is this dive. So I want you to read this. I'm not going to read it for you, but I'm going to go through the poem. So I'm going to point out some things that are really important here. This book of myths that she's talking about in the beginning is any book of sacred scripture. It could be the Popol Vuh, the Quran, the Pentateuch, the Torah, the Bible, the New Testament, any kind of book of myths. The speaker refers to it as a book of myths, okay? But it's a sacred text. And this speaker is diving down under the water. And as I remember, I talked to you that the ocean is a symbol for God. So she's going into the ocean, and she's taking very specific tools with her. She's taking this book of myths, she's taking a camera that's loaded with film, and she's taking a knife. All right. And she's a diver. And she says she's putting on this armor that she's going down, and she's going down alone. And this is important because she's going on a vision quest. And if you know what a vision quest is, it's kind of a spiritual journey or a spiritual test that a person goes through to kind of connect to the supernatural realm and get a spirit animal or purpose of their life or some kind of answer that that person is looking for. So she's here alone, and she's going down, and she's using the ladder at the very side of the boat. And she's saying the ladder is always there. It's always hanging innocently. But sometimes we don't use it. So she's making an allusion to say we can always go and find out the truth about God or the world or about ourselves, but sometimes we don't. But this speaker is, she's saying she's going to go down rung after rung, down into the water. We see her just like Man Adrift on a slim spar. We see her go into the water. She goes into this stanza. She says the water is blue, then it's bluer, and now the water is green, and then it's black, and she's blacking out. And yet her mask is powerful. So as she goes down into the sea, she loses the sunlight. There is no more ability to navigate using her senses. And here we get to the heart of the poem. She says, the sea is another story. The sea is not a question of power. Why? If the sea is God, God is not a question of power. God is power. So here she is. She is in the water. She is trying to meet with God. She says, I have to learn alone to turn my body without force, without trying in this deep element. I have to give. I have to surrender over. And she says, and now it is easy to forget what I came here for. And she's fascinated by the beautiful things she sees around her in the water. She sees these fishes with these crenulated fans as fins. She sees coral reefs. She realizes the world is real over here, but it's a very different world than the world of the land. And she says, I came to explore the wreck. And now here she gives some symbolism that the words in those books of myths were purposes. The words were maps. The words were not maybe telling the truth, but they were leading us to the truth. And she can go and she explores the wreck. And here we go. The thing I came for, the wreck and not the story of the wreck, the thing itself and not the myth. She doesn't want the story of God anymore. She doesn't want the history of human people on earth. She doesn't want it anymore. She wants God. She says, I came for the thing. I came for the wreck itself, the thing itself. I don't want the story. I don't want the myth. I want the real thing. And here she is. She says, this is the place. I am here. I'm the mermaid. I'm the merman. She has split now. Okay, now who is she now? She's meeting God. She's in this place where she's immersing herself in God. She's surrendering herself over, and she has split. She has lost her gender. She has become pure soul. She's no longer she. She's no longer he. She's both. And now she and he circle silently around this wreck. She says, I am she. I am he. I'm the mermaid. I'm the merman. There's no gender when we go to our soul. We're everything. We're masculine. We're feminine. We are pure when we are in front of God. And here she goes talking more about the wreck. And then she pulls this out and says, what's the point of this poem? We are, I am, you are, all of us in this human struggle. Right? By cowardice or by courage, we find our way, either because we're hiding too long or because we're running into it, but we find our way back to the scene. We're going to find our way back to our creator, carrying a knife to cut ourselves free, carrying a camera to record what we behold, taking this book of myths. Our names don't appear in the book of myths. You don't see your name in the Bible or in the Popol Vuh or in the Quran, but it's a story of humanity. It's all of us. It's the we, it's the us, it's the I, it's the you, it's all of us having some similar purpose here. And when we go and we meet this philosophical God or this creator or this architect, we are all discovering that this pureness of us, this pureness is universal. It is not just Adreinne. It's not just the speaker. It's not just the reader. It is all